Welcome everyone to the Digital Convivium of the Food and Climate Shaper digital bootcamps organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the Future Food Institute. Today, both of our sessions will focus on biodiversity, where thanks to our partner Crop Trust, an international organization working to safeguard crop diversity, our students will cook from diverse ingredients together with change makers and share insightful bites on how we can work together to protect our crop diversity for the future. Let me introduce you to Erik Oberholtzer, a chef, social entrepreneur, and food activist. He is the co-founder and chairman of Los Angeles-based Tender Greens, a healthy food restaurant chain, and Cohere Food Lab, which is an experimental place to test out new ingredients and products to incubate future foods, focusing on regenerative food systems and food as wellness. He's a champion of the Food Forever initiative of Crop Trust, and his recipe today is inspired by the current corn season. And that will allow us to talk about the in depth, what we can do with common ingredients by using lesser known parts of a familiar ingredient. Now, without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Erik and the participants.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name is Erik Oberholtzer, of course, and I'm a chef by background, and my language is that of food. I really experience the world through food and communicate outwardly through my experience with food, relationship with food, and the power of food to affect positive change in everything that matters now and in the future. All of you got a recipe, and I'm not very prescriptive in how I write recipes. I don't follow my own recipes oftentimes because you go to the market and sometimes what you imagined you'd find isn't there, and instead you find something that surprises you, and it's in those surprises that the magic of food is unlocked if you're adventuresome enough and experimental. And I chose this dish today partly because corn or maize is one of the four overly commoditized, industrialized crops in the world. 60% of our calories come from four ingredients, one of which is corn. And like its cousins, rice and wheat and soy, it's been diluted down to flavorless textural ingredients that are then manipulated into many of the processed foods that we know. And it's making us sick, it's making us fat, and it's forcing us further from our own heritage. So this dish, which I already made, and I hope you guys can see this. I'm going to turn my screen. This is my line fell. This is a quesadilla. So you can do either corn or flour. I chose corn. This is organic corn from Mexico. And then inside is a Oaxacan cheese. Oaxaca is a state in Mexico, one of the most vibrant food regions in the world. It's incredibly diverse. It's where cacao comes from, corn, a lot of other ingredients that we love and might identify with other parts of the world. It actually originated in Mexico, and particularly Oaxaca. And then to really make this elevated and interesting, there's huitlacoche. And huitlacoche is what they call Mexican truffles. And this is the fungus that will grow on the corn. It has to be organic. Any corn that's sprayed, often is sprayed so that it doesn't grow any fungus. But this is prized. And it tastes a bit like a mushroom, but it has its own flavor, own texture. It's unique, and it's delicious in a taco or like this with the quesadilla. And then on top, we have more organic corn, just roasted in organic sunflower oil, a little sweet summer onions, not sweet because I added anything to it, just because they have this natural sweetness. Some out of Afghanistan, a wild strain out of Afghanistan that I get from Burlap and Barrel here in the U.S., and then some coriander seed and the leaves, which is cilantro. And there are a lot of people in the world who have this weird reaction to cilantro. So if you have that, I feel sorry for you, but you can always use something else. And then because it's also sunflower season, I've got sunflowers growing everywhere here in our little garden in Philadelphia. So I just garnished with sunflower petals, just to show that, it's not just the seed, it's not just the flower for beauty or the oil that we can get, but we can use the entire plant. And that's really the idea of this dish, is that how can we take common ingredients that we all know and all have access to and is in everywhere, and then sort of reimagine them, reintroduce ourselves to them in a way that we discover the magic and the range and the varietal within a single group. And then also challenge ourselves, in this case within the family, with some lesser known ingredients like the wheat lecoche that might sit on the edge of the food system. And that's really sort of the spirit of my cooking, of what we do with Food Forever and the Crop Trust, and some other organizations that I am part of now. This is an extension of what we all know as the Farm to Fork movement, the local movement, the heirloom seed obsession. This is just the next step to really celebrating and unlocking the mysteries and magic of our food system. And with this, I just hope that one, you would challenge yourself to find some of these ingredients. It's not easy to find wheat lecoche, and then also understand the power of substitution. If you can't do that, you can do a mushroom, you can do other things. So don't get stuck just because you can't find one ingredient, because that need to always have something predictable is what holds us back from discovering the unusual. So I'm going to taste this because I'm starving. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon and I haven't eaten anything. And then I just want to kind of open it up to conversation so that I can be of service. There are a lot of things you can find on Google, but hopefully I can answer in such a way that it's not on Google. That's really good.
Enjoy. So guys, please go ahead with your questions. Maybe I start the round, but it will be kind of difficult because you read in the same time. So please take your time with the answers. But if you could tell a bit about the Food Forward initiative and your role as a champion to the participants, that would be great.
Let me clear myself real quick. Yeah, so Food Forever is really the extension of the Crop Trust, which is missioned with preserving the diversity of the seed stock around the world. They co-run the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which is a redundant backup supply of the world's crop diversity. So think of a Noah's Ark almost for plants. And then Food Forever is a broader tent that invites stakeholders in the food system who otherwise might be operating in their own silos of self-interest without an opportunity to collaborate. And and the magic of that is when you're invited into this tent of Food Forever, it puts me as a chef and as a restaurateur in the same room as, you know, Unilever or Mars or Google or the United Nations or the World Wildlife Fund, and Seed Savers Exchange, Cornell University. So suddenly you're in this collaborative environment, this collaborative community, all centered on this mission of preserving a food system that is at risk of being diluted down to just a few ingredients. And that gets into a whole host of complexity that many people can't fully understand. But what we have done is attached ourselves to the UN's SDG 2.5 specifically, which is centered on preserving agrobiodiversity, both in the plant system and also the animal system. The diversity of old breeds that are important for breeding programs, but also the protection of our history and celebration of these plants and animals that offer so much interesting flavor and texture. And as a chef, I'm uniquely positioned because I can understand what's going on with these forever plans drawn out by big thinkers and big organizations like the UN, and pull nuggets of actionable value out of that and put it into the market immediately. And that's what I do through the Food Lab and the work at Cohere, is how can I take some of these really, really big ideas and pilot them in small ways, and where they're successful, scale, and then report back, and where they fail, report back also, so that we have a constant feedback loop between, let's say, those of us in the trenches on the battlefield and those who are really thinking about long-term policy. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Just had to unmute myself. So guys, we are ready for your questions now.
Leonardo, I saw you eating. How was your quesadilla?
Actually, I was just having a regular dinner here in Italy.
You're having a bowl of pasta.
No, yeah, I had salad.
Okay, good. Now you'll stay fit.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
How can I be of service to the group here? This is a really complex topic that many people get lost in, and I think, you know, from a food perspective, there are two key channels. One is what we have in front of us, and that is going very, very deep into a single ingredient, in this case corn, and using the different aspects of it, different components of it in different ways, or going really, really wide, which leads us to the edge of the food system, into the unknown, into ingredients that we maybe have never heard of, like fonio or sorghum or finger millet. And those might be familiar to some people in the world, but not broadly. But it's our belief that these are important crops with incredible nutritional value and culinary range, and are likely, in some cases, to be the next quinoa, which at one time was on the edge of the food system.
I like to ask a question, especially from change makers like you. You mentioned that you, through this initiative with Crop Trust, you have the chance to be in the same room with bigger corporations, other institutions, universities, everyone. But let's be honest, when you are sitting in those rooms, you already have people with a certain level of knowledge about the food system. And then we have others, consumers, whose connection to food is literally by eating. So how do you address this topic to people who might not even heard about biodiversity before, or that are not even aware of the problems what the UN and the Sustainability Development Goals are addressing? What is the language, or what is the way how you try to reach out to consumers? Because we all know we need to create that demand as well for supermarket shelves to change. For consumers to maybe shop on a different way and not follow recipes gram by gram, but understand that there are substitutes for almost everything.
Yeah.
What communication do you think is the best to use?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The short answer is meet people where they're at. Not everybody's at the same place. So the language that I use when I'm at Google in California, or at the United Nations in New York, or in Svalbard at the seed vault with a bunch of plant scientists, is much different than when I'm communicating to my team, to the under-resourced, let's say educated. So the one universal language is deliciousness. So if you can make something delicious, craveable, relatable, and accessible, both in terms of, I can go to the store or the restaurant and get it, or when I get there, I can afford it. That's key. But if people don't even try it, then deliciousness doesn't matter, because you need trial. And I think the trial, the sort of the easy button on trial is health and wellness. So not everybody sees health and wellness the same way, but if you lead with, this is a superfood, for example, then people, they don't necessarily know how to define that. They can't rattle off the nutrients that make up a superfood, or why. But if you are able to message in that way, and say this is a superfood, and not lie that it truly does carry intense nutritional value, then people buy into that. They say, I'm going to eat kale, I'm going to eat acai, I'm going to eat quinoa because it's really good for me. And somebody will then figure out how to make it taste delicious. So kale wasn't always delicious. You have to work with it a little bit. And that's where we get into the different layers of anything, whether it's food or fashion or music or art. There's a great scene in A Devil Wears Prada, which is it's a movie about Anna Wintour, and her assistant very critically says, "Why does this? You guys make such a big deal out of this? It's just fashion." And Anna Wintour turns to her and just leans into her and says, that sweater with that color, which she names, was chosen for you 5 years ago, spring season in Milan by Karl Lagerfeld. And it went through a series of filters and reinterpretations and marketing channels before it found its way to your discount rack on some Kmart shelf. food is exactly the same way. So you have the great chefs of the world, you have the foodies of the world, you have the people who will fly to Noma for dinner, pre-COVID, um, and eventually people start to pay attention what Rene Redzepi or Jose Andreas or Dan Barber or whoever is doing, and they start to replicate. And that makes it down to the local bistros, which then ends up in the local markets, which ends up creating demand to grow certain ingredients by the local supply chain and produce certain things by local artisans who then, if they're successful, scale up and begin to sell as consumer packaged goods, which ends up in the supermarket, first at Whole Foods and then at the bigger markets, and eventually the best end up getting all the way through to the 7-Eleven or the the corner deli. And there's there's sort of a Darwinian filtration system to all that, and there's dilution along the way because the economics and everything else. But that's sort of how it works. And if you get it right and say, I'm going to pick Fonio or wheat lacoche in this case, and I'm going to just make a name for myself around that product, and eventually people will pay attention if I'm skilled enough, you can get it into the food system at scale. And our goal is to inspire as many chefs and food companies and media outlets as possible, and farmers and producers to really celebrate a few ingredients that are true to their heart and go for it and go do the work, so that we're not all getting behind one ingredient and just creating another monocrop problem there. But we have advocates and champions throughout the world working through their lens, through their channels of influence, through their supply chains, and seeing what is successful. And it's just an encouragement to lean into the new, the novel, and the obscure, and make it part of the modern day narrative of tomorrow.
Thank you. I think Komi has a question. Komi, do you want to raise your point?
You might be on mute.
Thank you, Erik, for your purpose. And I want to know, as a food champion, what type of diet do you recommend for us?
Say that one more time. What kind of
Diet.
diet do I recommend?
Yes.
Well, I think obviously a diverse diet. So if you have access to a diversity of ingredients and you have a local supply chain that follows the micro seasons, and you have farmers who can grow a lot of different types of crops, then support them, because you're purchasing, whether you're just an individual purchasing for a household, or a chef or restaurateur purchasing for a service, or a food company purchasing for product lines. It starts with consumerism and supporting the supply chain that I'm talking about. And then from a health and wellness or dietary perspective, it is known that what we call good food, grown organically, grown within the season that it was meant to be grown, grown with other crops, is grown in rich soil is going to taste better, is going to have higher nutrient density. And because it tastes better and because it makes you feel better, you're going to end up going back to it. And I would advocate for a sort of a plant, what we're calling plant forward diet, that you really lean into plants and not exclusively. I'm not a a vegan or vegetarian, but I would say that I eat mostly along those lines. And then when you eat animal products, know your animal. I referenced Portlandia earlier. I have a chicken here that is named Portlandia. Know where your food comes from, whether it's a pea or a poultry, and know how it was raised or grown, and it's just going to ultimately make you feel better. You feel healthier, and like that, I think much happier. So I take the Michael Pollan approach of eat whole food, real food, good food, mostly plants, not too much. Don't overeat. That's the best. I borrow it from Michael because he's said it better than anybody. Does that answer your question?
May I ask you an information?
Yep.
I know lots of people that don't like practically anything. I live in Italy, and they don't like practically anything if they don't know it. They only like the things that they ate since they were a kid. So it's how can you force them to try new things, to eat something different from the usual things? Because I know some people that just hearing the name of something that they never ate before, they say, oh no, I don't want it, I prefer the usual things I eat always. But this is not I think a something that help the variety of foods.
Yeah, you bring up a really important point. You have the benefit and the curse of living in Italy. Italy has some of the best food culture in the world, but you have many people there who are, this is how we've eaten for centuries, and we're not going to get outside of our box as part of national pride.
Exactly.
And we have that everywhere. Food is part of our identity. I am challenged all the time with that, both with customers. For now, let's keep the music. Sorry. And what I do is I start by working it into recipes or meals as kind of a surprise where they don't know where it is. So I have something here. I'm glad you asked that, because I have a few things here. You'll know this. Most people don't know this as an eggplant because it looks a little funky. In Italy, this would probably be relatively common. It's probably an Italian heirloom varietal. This one is perfect for your question. This is it's called a badger beet. So it's a beet, which most people think they can't stand because their experience with beets have been they're boiled and flavorless, or canned and flavorless, or pickled and just sort of this thoughtless garnish. The other day I served this, and this was developed by Rose 7, Dan Barber's company. I don't know if you guys know Dan Barber. He's a famous chef here in the U.S. out of New York, Stone Barns, and then has developed a seed company to breed for flavor. And this is one of the the results of that. And the thing about a beet is when you buy a great beet from a very special seed, and then you prepare it with care, and in this case, I would roast it simply, and then you put it on a plate with other things. I had a journalist in the other day for lunch, and I made what I would loosely call a salad niçoise, not a book-defined niçoise. But at the bottom, I just had a half of this beet roasted, and there were other things on the plate. When he got to this, out of all the other ingredients in this salad, and there were heirloom tomatoes, there were other things that were very beautiful, he said, "Wow, what is this?" And it's sort of yellow and orange inside, which is why it's like a red flame. He's like, "What is that?" And I said, "That's the Badger beet." He's like, "Beet? I hate beets." And I'm like, "Well, what do you think about that?" And he said, "I love this, but this doesn't taste like a beet." And I said, "It doesn't taste like the beet that you know, but this is what a beet was meant to be." And this is what I'm talking about, whether it's corn, a tomato, an eggplant, even a dish. People take Italian food from whatever region and they mostly mess it up because they don't understand how important it is to use the ingredients of the region. So one of my favorite regions is Bologna. And what's so good about it is it's super simple, but it's pristine ingredients from the region that has deep history. But if you don't understand that, if you don't respect it, or you use lesser ingredients to replicate a bolognese or something, it's not going to be awesome. So that's a long answer to say deliciousness and really, really the best ingredients. They don't have to be the most expensive, but the best version of a beet cooked with care and presented in a way that, maybe you're not selling it to them. You let the beet sell itself and surprise them. And it's a little bit of that trial. People are afraid of what they don't know, which is hard for us to understand sometimes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help or answer?
Oh yeah, thank you. Because here in Italy, I live in Bologna, and the biggest problem is to make people that used to eat Italian food, other foods. It's a very big problem. I had a friend that I told him, one time, "Do you eat sushi?" "No, I hate sushi." It's not something really strange in Italy. Sushi is known, I think, quite. But he said, "No, I hate sushi." It was like a year that I didn't saw him. And last time I saw him, he told me, "Oh, let's go to the sushi. I discovered it." And he told it to me, and he said that he ate sushi before eating that, because he always ate like lasagna and things like that. I think it's a cultural problem more than a taste problem, maybe.
I think that you're exactly right. And here in the U.S. and it like Italy, there are different subcultures within the United States, but you have people who were raised on fast food and processed food, and that's their comfort food. So even something as simple as a salad to some they won't even taste it. It's almost going against their political values. And you have a very famous chef there in Bologna, Massimo, and he was rejected early on before he became famous because he was really trying to get outside of that box that you just described, and the press and the locals attacked him. And it wasn't until people from the outside came in and wrote about them, and Michelin came in and said, you know, this guy's doing some great stuff, that the local people started to pay attention. So sometimes you need influence from the outside, and I would imagine your friend maybe you know, had influence from a partner or somebody they admired who got them out of their own way and gave them a pathway to discover sushi.
So, can I ask is someone else talking?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Erik, considering the challenge of modern life, well, people are increasingly busy, and they say, I don't have time to cook, and cooking is a waste of time. So we see the increasing of delivery service, such as Uber Eats. And how can we encourage people to return to the kitchen, to return to the habits of cooking every day?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a big worry of mine, and I think it ties into the previous question that, you know, convenience, and I'm sitting here in a convenience culture. You know, fast food was created because people started to move around in their cars versus walk to their local market, and fast food became this predictable, affordable means to get something fast while you were on the road. And I fear that now delivery apps and Uber Eats and all of these are essentially the new version of that, where I just had a visitor here. It's Portlandia. They tend to join Zoom calls.
I have some here also.
They've been my emotional support chickens through this whole thing. So I worry, but I think it's the responsibility of all of us to slow down, you know, and try and invite more and more friends to our table. And the ritual of eating together over a good meal, you guys know because you're on this call, but it's not for everybody, and it's I think it's a little bit of meeting people where they're at again, and can we provide the experiences that that we think preserve the culture and the ritual of breaking bread together, while at the same time acknowledging people's busy lives. And that was sort of the reason I started Tender Greens. The idea of Tender Greens was to celebrate organic local farming systems and the chef passion for food and the language of food and the ritual of food, while at the same time acknowledging that, you know, in the case for me, people were working longer hours, they were in their cars on longer commutes, and they didn't have as much time or resources to eat on a daily basis good food. So I borrowed some of the ideas of fast food without losing the quality of slow food. And I think it's the same thing with delivery. You're going to have to acknowledge that people want food brought to them, while at the same time, I think we're also learning about ourselves that we need to gather. We need to get together and break bread and enjoy good food as a community. And the more we can create those special moments, the more likely we'll encourage people to stop and really enjoy the food. And are you also checking in from Italy? Where are you?
I'm from Brazil.
Ah, Brazil. So I unfortunately have not been to Brazil yet, but I can say that the Italians get it right, and we certainly visit Italy because we love the way they live, or at least our perception of the way they live in Italy, particularly around food. And I think we can all learn a lot from the Italians, despite maybe the food box that they put themselves in the small villages. Are you seeing that in Brazil people are really going for convenience, whether it's sort of convenience food through delivery or fast food or whatever?
Well, I face two different realities because I live in São Paulo. So that's the daily life. I see it most of the time. Maybe one thing that is like a impediment to this is sometimes the lack of money. So if people have money, they will go to delivery. But at the same time, I live in my parents live in the countryside in a small city. So this culture of eating together is very strong here.
Yeah.
And so I see these two different paths. I have this tradition also with my family, and I really like your idea of encouraging people to be together around the table, promoting experience, for example. I think that it's very nice because people love eating, and when it's like magic moment, they see the true power of that.
Yeah, and I think what you just outlined in your own experience is the reality of the city, the reality of resources. So if you're well resourced in the city, then you can go to restaurants and you can sit down and have a lovely meal. If you're not, then you get what is quick and high in calories to get you through the day. And too often the relationship with the food is not a positive one, because it's one of scarcity and brings maybe sadness. So this is everything is a conversation around those of, let's say, privilege and those who lack privilege. And my mission has always been to try and be inclusive and bring everybody along. And sometimes you have to make some compromises along the way so that you provide reasonable access to everybody.
I think.
Sorry, can I just? Sorry, does someone else want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Maybe just as kind of an idea or inspiration, because I noticed lots of people are asking, how do we get people to start cooking again? I think one of the key things is that if you try to ask someone a recipe, it's just so stressful for them. They just are like, screw it. Even if it's not even a super difficult recipe, they just panic. And so they're like, and they get super hungry, and their kitchen is kind of disorganized, so it takes them a while to assemble stuff. And so they just go, screw it, I'm just gonna go buy takeout, even if it might have been faster for them to cook something. But we did pre-COVID-19. I was working with our local community here, and they're thinking, okay, how can we use food to help facilitate creativity? And so once a month we were having like a workshop, and the workshop was actually kind of like a business related workshop. But what we convinced the community to do was to hire a local cook. And what they would do is they'd hold a workshop. And what they did is, instead of trying to make someone make like the whole meal per se, or even one element of the meal, like we broke down the steps. So we prepped everything in advance, or almost everything in advance. So they only had to do a few simple steps to basically the fun part. So like the first one we did was a dumpling workshop. And so the lady pre-made the dough and she pre-made the filling, and all they got to do was the fun part, which was to make the dumplings. And then the second one was like just a Mexican, like a Mexican taco workshop where you got to make the gorditas. And again, she had everything kind of pre-made and just made it kind of simple so they could assemble. And in both cases, the kind of the feedback I got was that they really enjoyed it. It was lots of fun. They were doing something. It was we kept it really simple. And I think the most important thing, or one of the key things they said was, unlike in other cooking workshops where the chef there is kind of such a perfectionist, they kind of control what you're trying to do. We allowed all of the people there to do whatever they want. So we showed them how to make a standard dumpling, but we told them they didn't have to make a standard dumpling. So they started making rolls and weird cakes and all sorts of weird shapes. And the hilarious part was we had to cook them afterwards, right? And so then what we did was we had them do kind of this food workshop, and then people started talking because, you know, they're like, oh yeah, these are Chinese dumplings. Oh, we have this type of dumpling too in Turkey, or we have this other type of dumpling elsewhere. And it started that dialogue and that interest again, and people to think, oh yeah, I can show you how to make my type of dumpling in our country, and that sort of stuff. And maybe if you could just think of really simple activities you could do and really just try and think of how you can make the process as simple as possible for them to enter back into the cooking, that might be one way to kind of open their eyes up and maybe have them have an issue. It's like, oh, this is not so bad. Oh, this is actually kind of easy, you know? So, and hopefully we'll get to continue that once COVID-19 is over. But I just wanted to tell you guys that, and if anyone wants any more information, happy to offer it around the activity.
What's your organization? How do we find you?
It's Food Techies Finland. I'll put it here in the chat, and I'll reach out to you too, because I also was having questions about crop trust, and I was curious about how we could encourage biodiversity. And I don't know if we can get the message across to the farmers, but I was interested in figuring out how we could reach out to the farmers and encourage them to maybe grow more interesting crops here in Finland too. So, but yeah, I'll reach out to you.
I was in Finland about a year ago, and you know, there's a great food culture there, and particularly around mushrooms and foraged ingredients. So you start with what they know and love and cherish and identify with, and move from there. A couple things came up for me as you were speaking. One, the power of the meal kit, Blue Apron here, a lot of others sort of unlocked that mystery that people still want to cook, but they want a lot of the mise en place set up for them. And then you know, years ago, Betty Crocker, which was a cake mix. At first, they did it with just add water, and people didn't like it because they didn't feel as though they were really doing enough. So then they took some ingredients out and added in the instructions that you needed your own eggs and milk and a few other things. It made it easy enough to finish off the way you discovered in with what you were doing, but enough steps to make them feel as though they could proudly serve it for guests and say it was, you know, it was homemade. And I think there's a lot in that. You know, how do we make it easy enough, but not so simple that people don't feel connected with it. And I love the unlocking of the cultural connections that, you know, this is all in people and they don't even know it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome, and hope to chat with you more.
Absolutely.
I think Michaela had a question, and I also would love to know what she was cooking while during the session.
Hi, checking in from Costa Rica. I'm cooking the quesadillas a little bit different because I'm vegan. But my question was, who were the chefs that inspired you on your journey and how you're like sustainable and conscious about your food? And yeah, I love to do research into chefs and get inspiration from their recipes or their philosophies or how they integrate their values to let the food be the advocate rather than themselves. So yeah, I would love to hear your inspirations.
Yeah, my early inspirations were Alice Waters of Chez Panisse and Bradley Ogden of the Lark Creek Inn in San Francisco and Berkeley. I cooked with some of them in the early 90s through San Francisco, and at the time, the Bay Area food culture was just blossoming because of the wine industry, and then a lot of artisans were coming out of the region, and then farmers and chefs were collaborating on. And this, Vivian, this is to the farmer's point. How do you get them to grow more diverse crops? We were working with farmers who were challenging us and bringing us heirloom tomatoes that we had never seen before, or peppers or eggplant or whatever that we had never seen before, which then became this source of inspiration. So that really set my foundation for ingredients from very special seed stock, and then organic agriculture, and just picked or just harvested ingredients that that I had deep relationships with the farmers and the ranchers, and then a community obviously that supports that. Down in Los Angeles, I was really inspired by Wolfgang Puck, who was just an early trailblazer for moving beyond the kitchen and creating a brand, and also producing some of the most talented people under him and giving them enough creative freedom to to express themselves, build their own name and identity, and therefore scale his influence. And then ultimately, Marie Haga, who I met in Los Angeles and was the executive director of the Crop Trust, and sort of engaged me, and it's been an amazing 3-year journey with the Crop Trust and Food Forever and the Rodale Institute. I've been inspired by Dan Barber and what he's been able to do. So there are a lot of people that I admire.
That's awesome. The only one that I had heard of that you mentioned was Wolfgang Puck. He's incredible. We have a restaurant here of his in Costa Rica. P.F. Chang's one of the most popular. But the ones that I got were Alice Waters, Wolfgang Puck, Maria Haga, Dan Barber. Was there one that I missed?
Bradley Ogden.
Bradley Ogden. So cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And many others. You search those names and you'll get a whole family tree under them.
So cool. Thank you.
Beautiful country down there. I was actually, we did a Food Forever event in San Jose about a year and a half ago.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we've got some great resources for agriculture and farming and fresh ingredients and organic green space. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I saw some things popping up in the chat previously, but then the questions just came in. So if we have maybe 1 or 2 more before we round off. No?
I do, as usual. Just thank you, Erik, for your conversation here and for bringing this subject. I agree with this part that sometimes recipes, they make things a little bit more difficult for people, on their daily lives. just like as chefs, I think what people are trying to do, and some chefs are, some people that show healthy recipes are doing, it's just like showing what's in season, what's on season on that country, and give like a standard recipe, but then they say, oh, you can change it for this and this and make it more seasonal and local. So that actually works quite well. And sometimes on a daily basis, like to pre-cook some things and then freeze it and then only have the vegetables added, just like some quick, fast stuff that also is healthy. I think that not non-rigidity of the recipes for the daily lives. It's something to make people eat more healthier.
Yeah, I agree. One of the best parts of cooking is shopping for food. If you have a good place to go, a market, and I always start early in the morning, and because of the season, I have an idea of what I expect. But like I said in the beginning of this segment, I always leave myself up to discovery and hope for it, and I have to be careful because sometimes I overbuy because I just, especially this time of year when everything's abundant, I want to grab everything. So it does take discipline, but you're right. It's shopping lists and guidelines with absolute flexibility within it. And as you develop your style, I had referenced this, what I call the salad niçoise. Oftentimes for me, it's either beans or grain that, you can meal kit, you can have those cooked and ready to go because not all, a lot of us don't have time to soak the beans. We're just not thinking that far ahead. And then, you add stuff to that to make it vibrant, whether, it's citrus or packed with herbs or, diced vegetables that make sense for it. And then, some leafy vegetables, lettuces that are going to lift it and make it really fresh, garnished with whatever you find at the market. And this time of year, it could be, some shaved fennel and tomato, maybe this badgered beet, summer beans, whatever. And then a good dressing, a vibrant, good, clean dressing. And it ends up being the best thing ever. And if you want a little protein, a lot of times I'll put some sardines or something on it, or a soft cooked egg if I need a little bit more protein. But otherwise, you can do it. You can do it vegan, vegetarian. It's delicious, and it's something that can be done throughout the year with whatever stuff you find at the market. Where are you calling in from?
Yeah, from Brazil.
Brazil too? Oh wow.
Yeah,
Brazil's in the house.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Erik. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. But maybe next time we have to let our guests know that maybe they should eat before the session because you don't really get the chance to grab a bite during this 1 hour. Sorry about that. But we really wanted to get your input on the questions about biodiversity. So thanks again for being with us today. And well, everyone, very good night or have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. And feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions. Happy to chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.